call the USD 49 Board of Education meeting for Monday, July 24th to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Been moved by Board Member O'Borney.
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Waddell. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Any takers? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the next item, which is communications from other organizations. John? Anything? Okay. Next item on the agenda is school spotlights.
It's nice to end up having, we have, I think, a couple meetings without these, and to end up having a few to share tonight is really nice. We have, amazing that we end up having a fourth grade student at O'Loughlin named Grace Glover, who's having a published book that's going to be published in Treasure. I said book, excuse me, a poem. The poem is entitled Earth, and it's going to be featured in the American Library of Poetry. And teachers, Kenda Liker, who ended up sharing this, turning this in, it was fewer than 20% of the poems that were submitted were selected to be showcased, and it's really exciting to end up having a student that's getting that kind of recognition for her writing ability. We also have wish to end up thanking the Kroger family stores. We end up having, again, they release the quarterly checks to our school district for the Community Rewards Program. That Community Rewards Program is one where that money really is valuable for the schools for different things that they end up needing throughout the school year. It's really the Dillon's customers, they can easily visit the www.dillons.com and click on the community tab, and this community evidently has understood that for some time because the amount is pretty significant that we receive. So it's really been very good for our community. So a really great thanks to the Kroger family. Have Hayes High School juniors qualifying for International Junior Golf Championship, which is really fantastic that Tragan McCrae, high school junior, qualified to participate in the Optimus International Junior Golf Championship. It's boys and girls ages 10 to 18 throughout the nation. It's really interesting that he's going to be representing Hayes in the 16 to 18 age division, and kind of fun to think that he's, I think he's there right now, Palm Beach Gardens in Florida from July 28th to August 2nd is when this is going on. So really wish him the very best and hope that he does as well as possible there. You know, this week it's probably a little more comfortable temperature there. So, those are the three.
Very good. Next item is the report of the superintendent.
Oh, I wanted to share that we ended up having quite a training at our Ellis County training facility here in town. We ended up having, the state had new rules for how the schools, the law enforcement, and judicial system work together. We had to have that memorandum of understanding between them, and decided in Ellis County that the Victoria and Hayes and Ellis would go together with the same MOU working with them. That was done, but at the same time, along with that, the state is requiring all superintendents in the state, as well as any police, any law enforcement that works with schools directly, to attend this particular meeting. Ours was here last week. It was great that I was able to attend. Shanna, our assistant superintendent, was able to, and our high school principal, Marty, was able to attend as well. So we had good turnout. The presentation was really one in which sharing how to end up interacting. It had many different facets to it, but I would say that all of them schools would be very familiar with, and you could probably take any one of them and make a full day training. So it was one that was interesting, but it really never did get into great depth on any one. The trainer herself, who was a law enforcement trainer, admitted that she ended up having probably 7 different topics that could easily be a day unto themselves with the training. But it was very nice to have that done in preparation for this coming year, what the state was expecting for that particular interaction. I think even there, most of the individuals around western Kansas who attended that did feel that we have been fortunate in having good relations with local law enforcement, sheriff, also judicial in that process. In the conversation, it does appear that maybe in some other communities in the state, maybe more on the eastern part, there's some examples that maybe some of that doesn't happen as easily, and that may be the reason why we're in this process of everybody's mandated to do this. But it was comfortable. It's something that we have said, and it's kind of sparked other conversations that I think is very healthy in that process of working with our young population here in Hayes. Another is just an awareness. Next week we're doing something that's really quite different in Hayes. We end up having enrollment that's going to be in one location. It's at the high school, and that's K through 12. We've not done that before. There's definitely great anxiety that exists of doing something different, but I think the idea behind it was really right on target of trying to make things easier in many ways for the parents, for the public. Instead of having, I mean, you could have a child in 3 different buildings possibly, and they have to go to 3 different locations and to do the enrollment. How we have it set up, I really think I have great expectations and believe it's going to be a very good thing for this next week throughout the enrollment. We even have a training session Monday afternoon before, and we'll have some guinea pigs run through to make sure that the system is working right, in preparation for Tuesday, which is the first day. So, and then lastly, I have an item on KSB. We end up having a training next week on August 1st. It ends up being training for board members, and at that particular meeting we'll end up having quite a number from this particular region again that will be attending. One thing that was requested is to end up having an advocacy meeting whenever they're doing this across the state. What they're asking is trying to set up the possibility of local community members, business, some board members, superintendent, just a hodgepodge of individuals who would want to come to this and then listen and have conversation about the changes in education, and not from the standpoint of just locally, but the idea of at a Kansas level, at a national level, and what the expectations are at this particular time. So at the Rose Garden next Tuesday at 7:30, for 1 hour, there will be just a very informal coffee setting, and we'll start the process of trying to invite some local individuals. Be nice if in the whole process we might get 40 people that would be in attendance for an hour to end up listening in on that. But the whole idea is to have that conversation, and members from KS, Mark Tallman is going to end up being the lead of that particular conversation. And if you've not been, Mark is a very interesting gentleman who has probably 3 times as much knowledge in his cranium as most people. So I think that's the piece that I think you would find entertaining if you do show up and are able to listen in for that particular meeting.
7:30 a.m. p.m.
7:30 a.m. Yeah, they're going to have that 1 hour before the other, because the other starts at 9 o'clock, and they're trying to end up having this meeting for just 1 hour. And again, very informal, just a matter of being able to attend and share. They wanted to share the changes, the major changes that's happening at the state level with education, and then nationwide as well. Those are the 3.
Yeah. Could you send that Invite.
I will. I will.
Be interested in going.
Yeah, this was only set today. I mean, that meeting at the front end of the other meeting was only arranged and organized probably this afternoon is when it was set. So.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for John on the report? Okay. Seeing none, move on to the next item, which is the financial report. Tracy?
Last week, the Supreme Court did hear oral arguments, and we are waiting to hear their decision. Not sure if it'll be this week, next week, or when that might be, but we are anxiously waiting. According to what the current law is, and that's what we are going off of at this point for our budget, just kind of wanted to share a general overview from all the budgets put together. So at the bottom of this form, I'll start there with the changes in aid. We will be receiving $1.9 million in additional aid, including special education. And then from that, we are taking off a loss in federal funding, a loss in declining enrollment, and a loss in Medicaid funding that will be occurring either this year or next year. So we are not able, since we know we're going to be losing that by next year, we're obviously not able to commit those funds to anything at this point in time. So that leaves us with a net of $1.4 million that we will have additional funds. And so back up at the top, I have listed what we know of our increased expenses from utilities, our increase in health insurance premiums, new positions. Some of those are going to be required since the legislature is targeting the at-risk population. So they are going to want to see that we are putting additional money towards those students particularly. So we have some new classroom aids, additional bilingual support. Then the slight increases to 403B participation that we always, anticipate may happen. And then the decrease in fees, the kindergarten fee obviously you've already eliminated, and the 33% reduction in workbook fee that we are recommending, you'll be voting on later this evening. So if that is approved, that'd be a total of $121,000 that we will need to use general fund money to supplement. And we have allotted $743,000 for increase in wages. That does include an increase for all staff and also some kind of catch-up amounts for certified staff who have been frozen for some time, and also classified staff based on the Fort Hays wage study and also surrounding districts. So we've allotted the $743,000 for that. And we will be discussing the negotiation part of that in executive session this evening, I believe. Our decreased expenses, we do have $162,000 in staff attrition, $177,000 in decrease in our sick leave payout, and $56,000 reduction in retiree health insurance premiums. So those total $435,000 in reduction that we have this year. So it really leaves us with a balanced budget at the end. So this is just, like I said, an overview of kind of the main topics that we anticipate.
A question for you. The projection on the loss in federal funding, that's the Title II funding. And are we fairly confident that's not going to be even more than what it is? Because it was zero in the original administrative budget.
That is over the course of the next 2 years, so we were decreased already this year, and it will be eliminated next year. So
Right, despite that it was zeroed out.
$150,000, yes.
They haven't budgeted anything down to.
I'm sorry?
There's no money down to.
For next year.
Right,
So
that was
that's
a,
looking at this year and next year, so we knew we couldn't put anything of that in salaries now or in the budget because it would go away, if that's what it's projected as of now. So yes, that's taking that into account.
because that was out of President Trump's administration to zero that level, but the House hasn't the U.S. House of Representatives has not acted on it yet.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're,
So we've been asked.
the worst case scenario.
Exactly.
All right. So this is advocacy why we should talk to our reps. All right, enough.
That's right.
Keep us-
Next Tuesday, 7:30.
Okay, that's good to know.
Another
Thank
thing
you.
I did want to point out on the clerk's report that is under the consent agenda, you will see all of our balances for June 30th. We did end the year with a balance of $3.1 million in capital outlay. So that was our final amount that we had. So you can see all the different funds there and what our final balances were on the clerk's report. What questions can I answer at this point?
There is a clarification to make. I know that Tracy said it, but it needs to be heard again. This is our work trying to put it together as what can work for a budget. There are still things that have to be approved to make this work. Negotiations, there's a piece in there that really hasn't been done. And as well, our notice of hearing for our budget isn't until August. We end up having August 10th set and then August 24th. So it's just that why are we doing this and squeezing it so tight is because everything did get squeezed so tight. You know, we would love to have been talking to you more specifically on this a month or two ago. It's just a matter, if anybody's wondering why, so if anybody's looking at this and seeing different numbers they're going, it is not set yet. It's not been approved, it's not set. These are really our best guesses at this point while we work on this.
Very good. Any other questions for Tracy on the financial report?
I do have a question here. This is into next year, but projecting out a little bit further, how much more space do we have to reduce the workman's comp premium? What would it take to get that to go down the next year so we can have that show up as a net positive in our budget?
Just continuing to do the work we're doing and get our mod factor down, you know, by reducing the number of accidents and the number of claims and how large those claims are.
And that's continued to drop over the last year or two here, so.
Right. And actually, I mean, with an increase in wages, you know, your work comp is based off your salaries. So we could actually see a little bit of an increase in the cost, but that would just be because we're paying more people higher amounts. But we would still obviously look at our mod factor and see if that's going down, monitor that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if we get under 1, it would be really ideal.
So that's one of the places we could, may or may not see a change. And would any others that we have the potential to, looking again in a couple of years from now, that like the sick leave payout or
Right.
the retiree health insurance?
The health insurance, remember, next year is when we may see more significant savings even with that plan, the changes that was made with healthcare. So,
And we definitely, you know, we said last year when that went through negotiations to change the retiree health insurance, to decrease the amount of sick leave payout, capping that. We said within 3 years, we're going to see significant savings. So each year, that's going to continue to grow.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda to include the board meeting minutes for July 5th, 2017, the approval of bills in the amount of $1,820,257.77, personnel transactions, the financial report to include the clerk's report and the investment report, and the approval of surplus items.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Been moved by Board Member Waddell, seconded by Board Member Lang. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is the fees for the 2017-18 school year.
It has not changed really from what I gather our last meeting. There's about $91,000 less that we would bring in from fees by changing it, decreasing that fee from 33%, go from 135 to $90, and so I didn't know if there was any questions that board members had at this particular time, or I know we've been supportive of that all year long. Actually, back in September, October, there was the desire to even make a motion back then of trying to go ahead and act way in advance. And here we are, close to August, and finally in a spot to vote on this. But our intent was to act on this part with the kindergarten and look at it for this next year to see if there can be even more reduction in fees at the beginning of next school year as well.
So we basically have the kindergarten fees are gone
They're
now,
gone.
and then we'll basically have a $45 decrease here.
For the fee
Workbook
that
fees.
every student
Pays, right.
Every student pays.
Okay. Very good. I would entertain a motion to reduce the workbook material fees from $135 down to $90 for the 2017-18 school year for all students in the district.
Make the motion for the motion as presented. You read it all.
Been moved by Board Member Adams and seconded by Board Member Waddell. Any further discussion?
I think the only thing I wanted to add is, John, you've talked about this before, and we've identified this. This is kind of one of our goals as well. I mean, this has been one of our, is it our objective under our goal? But I mean, this is something we've been striving to work for, and I know I'm very happy to be able to vote on this and to be able to do that. So.
Well, and I think it's important to note as well that hopefully we can continue to chip away at the fees and get them down even further in the coming years. So, okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is the bond issue planning.
I wanted to share just at the front end, this is really, there is no presentation plan. There's not a matter, that was done at the last meeting and a recommendation was made at that time. From the last meeting till now, it ended up being a matter of gathering more information and trying to make sure that the Board of Education was informed as well as possible as far as questions that they end up having. We're very fortunate to have representation from Piper Chaffrey, from Nabholz, and from DLR as well that are here. We view them as the experts working with us if there's questions that you end up having. We also have representation from the vision team, representation from the executive team, and also the planning team. So the different teams that were involved in this process of developing the plan, there are some representatives here from those groups and really present in case there are questions that the board ends up having. But I just wanted to share there's not an organized presentation or plan at this particular time. This is for you at this particular point.
Very good.
Just maybe a question on the, we have seen in the proposal the spaces, all of that really is, this question, is that all expanding our educational space for the architecture, the increased square footage, things of that sort?
Paul, you want to repeat your question?
Yeah.
Make sure I understand it.
It was partly, I just wanted to reassure that what I heard when I met with your team on a video conference last week, that is, I was looking at the gym and some of the increased spaces that, and even the performance area that we were talking about at the high school, is all those have an educational use. There's not a competition space. It's all about expanding education use. Just if you would elaborate on that, please.
Yes, that is correct. It was important to include classroom additions as well as renovations to all the classrooms for that educational aspect. There's also a need for example, for gyms to have the added space for education purposes. There's scheduling conflicts as well as space requirements for those classes, and with the amount of students at those schools, they need that extra space in order to have the classes that are necessary. In addition, performing arts being able to support the needs and the wants of those programs as well. So I would say yes, for all the additions, for all the renovations, it's in educational purposes.
So like the performing arts could be used for classes as well?
Yeah, I think so. It could be used performances for classes, for other members in the community, for other events.
Okay. All right.
You know, one of the biggest uses of performing arts right now in high schools is for lectures and guest lectures and/or teacher lectures outside the traditional program. So teachers can schedule a performing arts facility to have lectures in as well. So it can be used year-round, but most importantly, it is an educational space. We're not building, designing, or adding any space that would be used strictly for competition or non-educational purposes. They all have dual use.
Okay.
I want to add as well, some of those spaces at different schools are also used to double as a safe room for safety in an event of a storm. So in different schools, the most cost-effective solution would be to maybe use an auxiliary gym or at the high school, the Performing Arts Center for that purpose as well.
Okay, thanks. And then another question, so I've got you up there, I'll ask the other question. In this the $78 million proposed cost, it's great, we'll look at building these spaces, and we've heard about the right sizing the classroom to be sure that we can get to our strategic goal of a parent-student ratio and be more reflective of the college and career readiness standards and the direction that the Commissioner of Education set, because we want to involve more. But isn't it going to take money to buy the furniture and things? How much was that going to be, or is that part of this bid?
That's all part of the bid, yeah. The furniture and the technology, outfitting, all of that is included in that cost. It's included, broken down as a part of a soft cost is what we call it, but yes, that's all planned for.
Okay, so when we move forward with this and the community votes in favor of it, we're not going to have a surprise cost, oh, you got to spend $200,000 on desks. This is all incorporated.
This is the number for all of that.
All right, that's very helpful. And then I have a construction management at risk question.
Okay,
Who wants to take that?
sure.
We have heard the price of this is 78 point, I gotta get it right. 78.5, so I was gonna round up, so it's good. 78.5 million, and this, in case the community and people at large forgotten, we went through this fall, was that right? A lot of discussion of construction management risk, and we chose your firm to do it because we'd have assurances that the cost that we are able to raise from the combination of what we put in with the property tax, but also what we're doing by shifting the money that we would use to fix buildings, that's a fixed cost? How are we going to assure
That's
that?
correct. The $78.5 million is an all-inclusive number for all of the scope that's been discussed. That includes the actual construction of those facilities, renovations, additions, fees for architects and engineers, the fee for Nabholz and for Paul Wurtenberger Construction, who's here tonight too. That's an all-inclusive number. At some point, as we move through the schematic design phase, the design development phase, and then on into construction documents, at some point, Nabholz and Paul Wurtenberger Construction will come to the school board and give you a guaranteed maximum price, GMP. This is the number. Construction will not go over this, and it's a set number.
Okay.
If there are any savings, if we can find ways to save dollars throughout the project or in pre-construction services, those dollars stay with the school board.
Okay, that's good. And then going on with, you mentioned Paul Wurtenberger and others. What's the, if we do this construction, what's the impact on the workforce in our area to move forward with this construction?
It's major.
So, please elaborate.
So, under construction management at risk in the state of Kansas, we are simply here to manage schedule, safety, and quality on behalf of the school district. That's our goal. And what we want to do is reach out to the local community and have them come in, and we're going to have a day where we spend the day with them and we find out the capabilities of each one of the subcontractors, contractors right here in Hayes, vendors, suppliers, and hopefully what we can do is write bid packages that will allow the local community to really shine and get a lot of the work. That's the goal. The beauty of CM at Risk is that since both Paul Wurtenberger Construction and Nabholz, we both have our own workforces too. We can self-perform work if we have to. So if you see a situation where a subcontractor is falling behind schedule, then we can supplement that subcontractor during the project, get him back up to speed, and then let him go on his way and keep the project going. But that's the beauty of CM at Risk. We can keep the schedule moving on schedule.
So schedule moving, price is fixed, no surprises.
That's
to
no
us,
surprises.
Particularly no surprises to the community, and then potential to keep our workforce working. And I guess in a way, it returns a lot of money to the community.
That's right. We like to find those local subcontractors, suppliers, and vendors, because those dollars that get spent in Hayes will keep getting spent over and over. So that's the goal.
Okay. And I'll stop.
You're fine.
Unless I have more questions you guys want me to.
You're fine.
I'm going to switch now to our.
Very good. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks, Ron.
So before I came here, I was asked by somebody, and I think you pointed out, but just because I didn't have my charts here, is that at this point, where do we stand in relation to anybody else in terms of what we do charge at this point with mills, our mill levies?
So, Mr. Adams, I think what you're asking is mill levy comparison. How does this district stack up to other school districts?
Yeah.
Good question. You may have a packet in front of you from our last conversation several weeks ago, or about a month ago, actually. There was a page in there that really provided a mill levy comparison, comparing Hayes School District to other school districts of similar size or districts that you compete against in your athletic conference, and now it's on the screen. So this just compares 2016-17 mill levies by both total mill levy and also bond and interest mill levy. But as you can see on that chart, from a total mill levy, I think you're second from the bottom when you compare total mill levy of all school districts. And then when we're comparing just bond and interest, again, bond and interest is a dedicated fund that can only be used for paying principal and interest payments on an annual basis. You're at the bottom with respect to how you rank compared to those other school districts.
Okay. And so even adding, what we're, and now I'm asking for a professional judgment, it may not be fair.
Right.
The strategy that we didn't see before of using some of our capital money and the other, how does that, I guess, what's the real advantage to that with people?
So I think with really with any financing plan, there's got to be some objectives. And I think whether it's term of financing, for example, whether we're evaluating 20, 25, 30 years or something in between, we're really evaluating, does the plan of finance match the facility plan, number one? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the number two is, in most cases, and I presume it's the same way here, is how do we make this affordable? And it's no different than us buying a home and figuring out, okay, well, what type of mortgage do we need to make it affordable for us as individuals when we purchase real estate or homes? The same sort of concept is what we're trying to look at here in terms of, does this plan, whatever plan the board decides to move forward with, does that financing plan match the facility plan, number one? And number two, when we match the facility plan, is affordability one of our objectives? And really, what is affordable? How do we define that, and what makes it affordable to the public? The plan that we've really looked at, we've obviously looked at a lot of different options with sales tax, with mill levy reduction strategies in order to make it affordable. And I guess I would define affordable as probably the feedback that we got from the survey, which really kind of said most people would support projects in that $10 to $20 per month rate. And so when we look at that, one of the strategies, okay, if this is really a 25 or 30 year facility plan, and we really want to try to stay within that $10 to $20 per month range, what are the strategies that we can impose to try to manage that as best we can? And so the capital outlay reduction strategy is one of them that allows us to do the larger project, right, and to take care of a lot of the needs that we otherwise probably would have paid for at a capital outlay. We can now pay for those projects out of a bond and interest, out of a bond issue, pay back through the bond interest mill levy, and then obviously reduce capital outlay mill levy to offset the increase in bond and interest. So the overall net increase, okay, so if we're talking about a 13.43 mil increase in bond and interest, if we offset that by 2 mils in capital outlay, the net impact to the taxpayer in the school district is 11.43 mils.
Yeah.
So that's the strategy, and really what that means is 11.43 mils is about a little over $16 per month, which again it's trying to meet that affordability test and trying to accomplish that objective.
Yeah, yeah. And I credit whoever came up with that. I thought that was a neat idea to do something that we know if as we move forward, we hope we move forward, and do this construction that, you're right, we won't need to put, I mean, we have already planned to put the resources in the building, we're just going to put it in to get something that's better than what we have, so I appreciate that. I'm going to go on to another question, if you guys are okay. Okay, with that. Let's see, I want to go to spokesperson for the visioning team. Do we have one, or all of you? I don't care. So,
There's two of us. No one of us is going to speak for the entire committee. There were a lot of people.
okay, yeah, they were. First off, do thank you, and I guess I want to be sure that the public understands that the board did charge your group to come forward to us with the plan, and I think that's credible what you've done, and of course, working with the architect team, and then us deciding on construction management at risk to be sure that we're fulfilling our fiducial responsibility to the taxpayers in our district. And so thank you for coming forward with a plan. I guess a little bit, so I want to be sure that I understand and that anybody that's listening understands is that, is everybody happy with what you did? Or is this the best plan that you compromise you come up with?
Everybody on the committee,
Yeah.
there's always a couple dissenting votes, but there was definitely consensus when it came down to it. We had at least 85 to 90% of the people present were happy with the plan. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers part of it, and then this is certainly far less than what we had last time. Conceptually, I guess I'm trying to capture is that last time we really talked about we're going to fix everything. Is that the attitude this time? Is there a different vision that you had this time?
I think there's a little bit different vision in that we decided not to fix everything that was broken. Sometimes we looked at it and said, maybe this needs to be replaced rather than fixed. There was a shift in conversations with the superintendent and the architects about neighborhood schools, that while we talked about wanting to maintain neighborhood schools last time, it didn't really exist. You looked at the maps of where students went across Hayes and you couldn't tell which school we were looking at by the footprint of where the students were driving from. So looking at what it would cost to bring schools like Lincoln up to par to where we would have parity and have things be even was outrageous. We were looking at spending $26 or $28 million to bring Lincoln up to the same level as a $22 million brand new construction. So there were for a four section. So there were some of those things. With last time, we were looking at spending major dollars on buildings that may not even have survived the scope and the length of the bond. Whereas this time, looking at some of those things, we shifted towards potential new construction. That was the debate between replace Wilson or renovate Wilson was, it's going to be 80, 90 years old by the time this bond is paid off. Do we want to have a building that we may need to replace at the end? Or do we want to pay the little bit extra now and then it's hands off and great by the time it's paid off, we won't have to do anything to it?
Yeah, and I compliment you for being bold in that decision. You know, the history in our community is that we like life as it is. You don't necessarily want to get rid of the building. So I compliment you in being bold enough to say the better what you felt and what. Of course, it wasn't. It was how many months did you meet?
6, 7 months. It started at the beginning of the year.
6, 7 months.
It actually started back at the end of the previous, so it's still after the previous bond. It was, we started just weeks after that.
Yeah.
To kind of.
So it's
start over.
fair to say you've been at this a long time,
Yes.
and we're happy to see tonight over. I know that's good, whatever it is, but that's a lot of investment time. I know some have questioned, was there enough thought? Did you build from the experiences of? We've almost been doing this, and correct me if I'm wrong, almost for 10 years. We've been talking about buildings. So you at least built, and I guess what impressed me is that you were willing to step outside and being to look at something not just different but better. But that's my interpretation. Why do you think the proposed plan to right-size classrooms and all that, why do you believe that's the best thing we should do? You were the visionaries. Why? Tell me so that the public knows as well.
Well,
I think this is a very solid plan that we have. Some of the things that we looked at were in compliments to the board as well, because you guys have listened to the general public and you've listened to your administrators of what they needed and put plans in place already that took a lot of the things off of that maintenance, deferred maintenance, things that we already had talked about in the previous bond. So that helped us kind of narrow down what we needed. We also listened to administrators and teachers to figure out exactly what they needed. They know better than me, even as a parent. I know as a parent what I want for my child, but they are there in those buildings every single day. And so they were able to tell us as well, based on their meetings, what they really needed for learning spaces and what they really needed to be able to have our students thrive, not just go to school. And so that learning space and being able to take different spaces and be able to utilize those in many different ways, so that if it is a gym, it also can be used for multiple different educational spaces. And I'll use the middle school as an example. We have 130, 140 students in that one space for one class period, because there's 4 different classes in that space at a time. So if for some reason there is a sporting event that happens to be during that class period, then all those students get displaced and are sitting in the hallways trying to do class work in the hallways. And so we were trying to look at what those educators needed to be able to provide a better learning space for all those people in different places. And that happens in the elementary schools as well. So they use a lot of different spaces. But we have, from the teachers, we had information from them to say what they really wanted their classrooms to be utilized for, so that they had spaces to get down on the floor and teach certain projects, science projects, social studies projects in different ways instead of just in one tight little space. And so those things take space, but they also take helpers where you need paras or extra people, extra parents in there. And if you have too small spaces, you can't even fit extra people in there to help. So that's kind of what we looked at in order to figure out what those learning spaces really needed. And the DLR group really helped us kind of understand what that meant and make sure that we, as looking at new schools, or like Wilson, or an existing school like Roosevelt, what they needed if we needed to expand as well. So if we needed to add on later, that you guys knew ahead of time where we could do that and what that meant when they built a new school, and how that would be already in the plan, so that if we did grow more, that could continue to expand.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered all of your question.
You answered a great deal. I particularly appreciate you working with the design team to begin to talk about that classroom space. In my day job, one of the things that they do look at is the research on learning and teaching and learning. And this last week, I was in Boston with teachers from all across the country, and one of the things we talked about was physical plant, the physical facility, and how it influences learning. So I thank you for considering that. I wish my own children would experience it. This is my last year, and even though I have no children in the district after whatever year it'll be, 2018, I wish I hadn't to start over, but don't tell my wife that.
Well, I hope that your children bring your grandchildren back here to UC schools.
That'd be nice. So I want to, I guess, you've answered many of my questions. I should turn over to my colleagues here, obviously, but I think the one thing that should be apparent to not just me, but to the community at large, is that this has been a long effort, not just on your part, but on many members of our community over the last decade. And the recent iteration is your team working with the architects, working with the finance side, working with construction management, is this is a big deal. And I do appreciate recognizing the efforts of the board to address the concern that the community has had about not maintaining maintenance. I think we've done the best, and I can only speak the current board, but I think all past boards, none of us neglected those problems. But the finances, as we saw, we're finally seeing a turnaround. The finances haven't always been there, but the plan is in place, thanks to the leadership of the board, to do that. And so thanks for recognizing that and how we'll particularly make use of it. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues. I'm done for the moment.
It's all good. I'd like to, I guess, first start off by echoing what Board Member Adams said as far as thanking the vision team, the architects, the CMAR, the administration, the staff, the numerous other groups that spent all this time and effort to go through, and just the dedication that they've put in all this. And I think I would be wrong if I said that we all weren't very, very appreciative of all the time that went into this. I know that there was a lot of time that went in. So having said that, I'll be honest, I have been a little bit torn on this decision. I've spent a large amount of time reaching out to community members, staff members, committee members, asking all of them one simple question, and that was basically, is this the right decision for our schools? Most of them that I talked with, all of them, in fact, all of them shared, not one of them had any concern that, was this needed? It absolutely was needed. Some of them did share, thoughts and concerns. They thought, well, maybe they had a few different questions that still needed to be answered, or maybe some clarifications and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I know full well that our district needs a bond. I know it's something we need to do for the schools, but I guess the biggest thing I've wrestled with is what is the right thing to do. I know that no matter what bond we go with, we need to do something, but no matter how big or how small this bond ends up being, it's not going to fix everything that we have. I know no matter what bond we go with or what amount we go with, some people are going to agree with it and others won't. And I also know there's no perfect bond, that no matter what we go through and decide or what we actually come up with, there's still going to be plenty of items that we need to continue to address on a daily, weekly, yearly basis, and that's going to continue for quite some time. So I guess the thing I also want to reiterate is no matter what proposal that we go with, there will always be things that we don't all agree on. And by all, I mean all of us, meaning the community, the staff, the board, everyone. So I guess the question becomes, who decides how much money is the right amount for this bond? We've said from the beginning that we as a board wanted the community, we wanted the committee, the staff, and everybody to tell us what was needed. They've done everything from surveys to phone calls to meetings to editorials. The list just goes on and on and on. And I know the committee used a lot of this information as they moved forward in putting together what they felt was the best plan for our district to hopefully address our needs for the foreseeable future. So I guess the question arises is, where does that leave us? I think the committee comes before us tonight not to ask if $78 million is the right amount for this bond, but I think they ask us if they can take it to the people of the community and let them decide. I've struggled with where I stand as a board member in the fact of when we were, and not, I guess I want to reiterate, not because I don't think this is needed or I don't think it's the right thing to do, but I've struggled since I know we as board members were elected to do what was best, number one, for the kids, and also to be the best stewards of the district's money that we can by operating the district in the most efficient ways possible. I distinctly remember after the previous bond failed, one of the items we heard from the community was that the board didn't thoroughly explore alternative options, that we didn't look or consider various spending decisions in a lot of areas. We gave our word that we would definitely do that and we would strive to do that for the next bond. Having said that, I think that the committee has done a terrific job overall, and I really do appreciate them sharing all the information that they've come up with. Having said that, I do have a few other questions, I guess, that I want to go through. I guess I just kind of wanted to get some of that out, but I guess a few of the things I want to go through, and if you guys can answer that or the other ones, but there's been, and even in visiting with some of the committee members, there seemed to be a lot of confusion as far as on the sections. So I guess I want to get a final, that we can get out there in the public, the final number on sections. How many are we going to have? I know there's been some talk, as far as kindergarten and first grade, having some additional. some of the stuff in the things that were sent out were a little confusing in the fact that we talked about, additional 2 to 3 in some of those versus that. So I guess I just want to get some clarification if I can on the sections. So whoever you guys,
Is that 12? 12 total?
I have a few handouts I want to give everybody so you can have it in front of you and look at it as well. There's 3 sheets per one. The short answer is there are 12 sections and an additional section, so 13 sections for K and 1.
okay?
And what I'm passing out, I should have kept one for myself. So what you can see in front of you, the second sheet is the current elementary enrollment for 2016 and 2017. That was given to us by the district, and that kind of lays out the students that are currently enrolled in K through 5. And then at the bottom of that, you can see the number of sections. So there are currently 11 sections of K through 4 and 9 sections for the 5th grade. And again, that was given to us by USD 489. So if you go to the third sheet, which is the blue table, and then in red, right above that, you can see how many students that would be per classroom, additional sections that are added.
So above the blue line is today, below the blue line is what happens if the bonds pass and is implemented. And it shows you you're actually decreasing the number of kids per classroom across the district. And to your question, Lance, you are increasing the number of sections. Now, what the bond does is it allows you to have the space to increase the number of sections. It doesn't fund staffing.
Right, and that was going to be my next question, so.
Tax dollars for bond issues. And I want to make sure the
Right.
public understands that. As a school board, you obviously get it, but the public needs to understand, we can't use bond dollars to pay staff salaries. So to hire enough teachers to decrease the student-teacher ratio, you have to have the classrooms to do it. The bond gives you the classroom space to allow the teachers to have the room to do it. You have to fund the teachers as a part of your ongoing operational costs.
So, and I guess just to reiterate here, so for kindergarten and first grade, we're looking at 13 sections is the proposed deal, and the rest of them across the district would basically be 12 then, correct?
That's correct.
That is
yeah.
correct. After the bond is fully implemented.
Right.
And that's for 3 buildings.
Okay.
So there'll be 3. The proposal is 2 new elementary schools and renovation of Roosevelt.
Okay, very good. And I guess that does bring me in, I guess, John, that'll be something, I guess, that we would have to discuss, and I guess C on the other one, is obviously that number of sections as far as going to that, while it may not happen right away, we're probably looking in the average of 6 to 10 teachers. That's a fair amount of money, as far as that is going to be obviously funded every year from then year forward, so.
It was one of the goals, one of the 5 goals of trying to end up improving the ratio that exists for teacher-student.
Right.
And you're exactly right. It would be, this ends up setting the stage that we ended up having in our goal-setting meeting last week of saying, what can we do for that? Well, the only thing you can do is to have as well the space to end up then hiring the teachers to end up helping with that ratio.
Right.
The way it is, we don't have the extra space right now, even if we wanted to,
Right.
to really affect in a positive way the lower number for that ratio. This would give us at least that opportunity. The opportunity would also require some real, maybe challenges, because we don't know what that budget necessarily would be 3 years from now, 4 years from now. But it's looking more promising than the last 4 years. The next 4 years does have more promise than the past, recent past. And yes, it would be a sizable amount of money. I do not think that it'd be something that would have to happen immediately. It could be grown into. There could be a few that's hired each year for
Right.
several years.
And I guess to clarify, I just want to make sure that we have some sort of a plan in place. Obviously, until these are built and the other stuff, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. But having said that, we also have no guarantee for, this year and like you said, maybe even the next year or the year after. I think from a funding level, it's great. Our cost per pupil has gone up and everything else, but there's nothing to say that new governor comes in or something else and all of a sudden that drops out again. So I guess I just want to ensure that we've looked at all avenues so we're not putting ourselves into the same thing where we're scrambling, trying to have to make cuts and trying to just to be able to be able to pay for all these additional teachers that we're putting on staff.
Well, Actually, Lance, I would say that there's not necessarily a plan right now. There's a plan to have the buildings and that space, but it was not planned from the standpoint of a general fund, and that really, I don't think there was ever that intent of trying to arrange that long-term, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, to have that financial plan of filling up all those extra classrooms at this point.
Right.
One of the things that was stated was whenever you have a major bond and you're trying to end up improving your facilities, it's definitely better to have a few more classrooms, some more space, than to have just the same amount, or definitely you don't want less space, in trying to provide. So yes, that's still a big project of trying to look at the financial part of it. There are people in the state that would Hayes's numbers and say that Hayes's numbers are good, that ratio. The issue of 20 to 25 for many districts in the state, maybe even, when I say many, a good majority would say that's good. We're not even in the upper 20s, and there's plenty of districts that are at that point. We're just going off of our own goals of saying, even so, not a matter of a comparison, just ourselves, we would like it still to be lower. We would like, and it's been stated, we would like for the kindergarten and for first grade to be in the upper teens versus the lower 20s.
Very good.
And as a matter of talking about the number of sections and specifically the number of schools, this was a big discussion within the committee over and over and over about the concept of having 4-section schools. As you look at the bond, we're talking about building a new school, expanding Roosevelt, and proposing to build a new Wilson to have the capacity for 4 sections of each grade. The goal of that is balancing educational outcomes and cost savings. Nationwide, that's a standard showing that it's the most efficient as far as facilities upkeep, administrative costs, maintenance costs, but it doesn't overwhelm the facility or the teachers to where you're diminishing outcomes. So that's the goal of doing these 3 4-section schools, is to balance administrative cost with educational outcomes.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I greatly appreciate, because like I said, that was one of the things that I think, since I've been on the board, I think most of that was one of the things that has been a huge thing that's been talked about as far as, the getting the class sizes down and stuff like that. So again, I guess when we're talking about as far as doing that, I just want to make sure we're taking into account the, like I said, because the teachers, all that type of stuff are all going to be costs that we have to take into account as far as doing some of that, so.
And I just wanted to add, we do know that the operational savings of going from 4 elementary schools down to 3 would be somewhere in the ballpark of $300,000 per year. So over the life of a 30-year bond, you're talking about $9 million approximately. So that can help offset the cost of additional teachers.
That was how much per year?
That
$300,000.
was my next question. Thank you for reading my mind.
Yeah, if you remember when you hired us, that was one of the mandates that you said we needed to look at operational costs, and this is one of the benefits. That's a significant saving that can help staff those additional teachers. Now, obviously that $300,000 savings not with the teachers added, but teacher to teacher, what you have now for those 3 schools versus 4 is $300,000. That's, if you think about it, it's pretty substantial savings in operational costs.
One of the other questions I have as far as, the way we came up with as far as the funding and things like that, and this may be one for Dustin, the other one, but or even John, taking the 2 mills into account that we're talking as far as moving out there, what does that do to our capital outlay projections? Have we laid that out to, I know we talked several times that we don't think it's going to hurt anything in that, but I guess from a projection standpoint, where does that put us?
I think that maybe I'll start, John, and maybe you can. I think that before we even approach the subject, I think it was a conversation. Here's a strategy that other districts have implemented. Can we make this work? Will it work in the situation? I think that's when really John and Tracy kind of started looking at some details and specifics.
And I guess to stop you right there, because that was part of my other question, just to find out, you said other districts. How many other districts across the state actually utilize this way for funding?
Good question. So actually, we just did one here this spring that passed was Southern Lyon County. They did a $14 million bond issue. The total mill levy increase for a $14 million bond project was a little over 5 mills. They elected to reduce their capital outlay by that exact same amount, so the net increase was zero to their constituents.
Is this fairly common across the state that other districts do? I mean, how many other, you said the one, how many others do it?
I would say in the last year, we've had 3 that have implemented some sort of similar strategy. It's really just unique to the school district.
Okay.
I would say that it's explored when it's possible, but sometimes it doesn't make sense. I mean, there may be cases where some school districts are at a 4 capital outlay mill levy. They're not at an 8.
Okay.
And so it really is just a unique situation where it may make sense in some situations, it may not make sense.
I didn't mean to stop you. Just
No,
you said that.
that's a very good question.
That was one of my
Very
other
good question.
questions.
It is very unique, and it just depends on the situation.
Okay.
John, you want to talk about just the...
Well, I would say from our standpoint, Rusty was definitely involved as well, our director of maintenance. He ended up, was involved in the conversation as well as Tracy and myself, and I would say that the main item that we gathered from that is when you put together the prioritization that exists of all things that need the money to go into improvement year to year, the sizable amount that you can end up getting for these different projects are usually based upon trying to improve the buildings. And much of that money is going into areas that, again, this particular project would answer. So to end up saying, well, how would it affect our capital outlay? There is no doubt that in looking at the projects that would be eliminated, basically Rusty's list of, Rusty's work of list is going to be really shut down tremendously if this project would go into place. And basically, he's convinced, I'm convinced, Tracy, is that the 6 mills that would remain would actually be more usable money than the 8 mills that we have right now with the projects that we need to be able to tend to. Even to the degree that 6 mills in the first few years would end up probably providing us maybe a solution to some people's question about Rockwell. It alone in a few years could end up being something that could provide savings in the capital outlay that would provide some, like I said, some solution for us to. This is the one area that's not really being touched, and so really it might be able to be handled even with the 6 mills over a period of 5 years or so at the completion of this other project.
I will add just one thing, too, that I think is important as we look at that plan also, is that within that 6 mills, there's also lease payments that the district's currently making, and I want to say the lease payment for 2018 is around $900,000, if I recall correctly. In 2 or 3 years, that lease payment gets down to $200,000, and by 2021, that lease payment's gone. So there's some other dollars that are freed up. Now, there may be a need to replace that lease payment, those lease payments with another lease for other types of improvements, but maybe not to the extent of $900,000 a year. So I think that as we looked through it and kind of went through not only the projects, but just the lease payments, I think there became more of a comfort level that the strategy may be something the board may want to consider.
And with that strategy, I don't want anybody to forget the plan with this that was put together, that HVAC system for the high school was to end up tending to this this financial part of it. It was not a matter of it being part of the 78.5. It was a separate plan that we would be financing and utilizing some of that freed up money over the next few years, as well as capital outlay intended to it.
Very good.
Good question.
And the intent, I know it's repeat, but some things must be repeated. We intend, no matter what happens, to start that project in some way, or the HVAC system at the high school this next year. Not that it be completed, but there are some parts that can be done even this coming year, this next summer. So that is the plan.
Dustin, one other question while I have you up there. What is the average length of time across the state for a bond?
I mean, in terms of repayment? Good question. I would say, again, objective driven, right? So I would say there's some districts who do 20-year financings, there's some districts who do 25, there's some districts who do 30. I think it comes down to what financing term meets your objective. And I can't define that objective. I think the committee, if I don't want to speak for the Vision Committee, I think that they were very, very set on affordability, and really, initially it was $15 per month, and I think that they felt they were stretching it by going to the $16.43 per month, just to get a complete scope of project included in $78.5 million. So I don't know if it was a wrong approach, Lance. I think it's what approach fits your objective, and if your objective is affordability, then determining whatever term of financing you decide to move forward with, does that meet what you intend to do?
Very good.
And there are obviously pros and cons for each one. I mean,
Sure,
that's,
sure. I have a few others, but I'll let some other people. Sure.
Can I speak to the length of the bond, our kind of logic on that?
Sure.
I was going to ask for the visions.
Part of the concept here was looking at the scope of what we were doing. I think if this had been more of a renovations-heavy bond, extending out to 30 years would be a mistake. The fact that we're doing a more building-heavy, 2 new elementary schools, major renovations at the high school, we're talking about construction that is going to be long-term. The 30-year makes sense because we can add in those projects that really needed to be done sooner rather than later to kind of match the scope that we were looking at. So the 30-year, there was a lot of debate, 25-year, 30-year. 30-year feels a lot longer than 25 years. But when you're looking at building new elementary schools, the average age of our schools is 50, 60 years old right now. We're looking at building things that are going to last a good long time. And so the scope of what we're doing in this bond, everything should well outlast the 30 years that it would take to pay for it. We're not doing things that are quick fixes that are going to need to be replaced halfway through paying them off. We're doing things that this will take us well beyond that 30 years.
Very good. Thank you.
If I can ask John Fuller. John, I'm sorry. Could you also share, I know Chris did a nice job in sharing that one piece, but there was some talk as well of legislation that ended up changing a little bit of concern too as far as getting a bond.
Yeah,
Could
we've
you
heard.
Elaborate on that.
Yeah, the committee, really debated the frequent smaller bonds versus larger one bond issue. And at the time we did the survey, we didn't know what Senate Bill 19 was going to be, how it was going to affect bond issues. And fortunately, Senate Bill 19, when it was approved, if you look at the way this is going to end up with what the Senate Bill 19 is restricted, you may not have a chance to do smaller, more frequent bond issues. You get one shot at a bond issue where you're exempt from the state requirements because of the way Senate 19 is. After that, you have to get in line with the rest of the state and deal with the cap that the governor and the legislature has set on the amount of a bond issue. So in other words, right now it's $310 million, is that right, for next year? $330. $330 million has been approved for FY18 for districts that have already passed a bond issue in the past 25 years. So if some of the Johnson County districts pass bond issues to the tune of $400 million, they're going to have to figure out how to prorate everybody else that's passed them. So, and there is no right answer right now. Nobody really knows how this is all going to work. So smaller, more frequent bond issues, you may have been at risk. You passed the first one. We go back for the second bond issue in 10, 7, 8 years, whatever that is. You may have to say that we need $25 million, but the state only blesses you for $12 million of it. I think that would have done a disservice to the people on the committee who were trying to figure out a way to improve everything. So I think if we'd done the survey, we might have asked the question a little differently if we'd have known what the state was going to pass for a finance bill this year, because it dramatically changes the way you put a bond issue on the ballot and what can be approved statewide due to this new cap that they put on the amount of bond issues that can be run in the state. It really changes the dynamic. The good news is you guys have kind of a one-time, as I call it, get out of jail free card. You get to run one bond issue, any amount, the state can't cap you. Once you run it and it's passed, you're capped. You fall in line with everybody else in the state and have to be within that threshold of whatever the state approves that year for bond issues on the ballot. That kind of restricts us, we think, in terms of the number of frequencies of bond issues. So the strategy of smaller, more frequent bonds may be rethought by a lot of districts going forward. It's kind of a unique situation that really, I don't think even I fully understand, and I think we're still trying to address it as a practice. I don't know, Dustin, you want to add anything to that?
No, that's good.
And you said that passed, or it's up there, they're looking at passing?
No, it's done, it's passed,
Okay.
It's law. And we know several clients of ours that are running bond issues that will eat all of that up in one or two bond issues. We have a client right now that's talking one that dwarfs that, here in the state of Kansas, dwarfs the $330 million that they want to put on the ballot by themselves. And that's not for districts that receive state aid, at least the way that the state... It's every district in the state is capped at $330 million in total bond issues that can be run in the state of Kansas next year. So if $400 million are passed, we imagine what will happen is they will come back and prorate everybody's bonds to that amount, which, as you can imagine, is an absolute nightmare if you promise the public a certain scope, and now the state has come back and said, because other districts pass bond issues, you can't provide the scope your voters approved. It just creates a very unique situation that, to be honest, everybody that does our business is trying to get our arms around it. But like I said, the beauty of it is you guys don't have to fall within that requirement right now. You get one bond issue, you're exempted because you haven't had a bond issue in the last 25 years. And so I think the conversation with the committee might have been, had we known that was going to be law, might have been, should we even do a bigger one?
Very good.
I think for me, you had mentioned the size of the bond and everything else, but I mean, I don't know what the perfect number is for a small bond. That's, again, an eye on the beholder. Let's just say it was 30 million. But realistically, we haven't had a major bond. I think one of your slides said since 1990. So I look at it as a period of catch-up. So if you're telling me today we need 78, which is really around 2 times that 30 million mark, I don't know that I look at that amount saying it is very, very high. I think maybe my knee-jerk reaction when I saw it presented in June might have been, this is so much like the last one. But I think if you really research it and dig in quite a bit, that really shifts quite a bit. One thing I am loving tonight is being on this end, because you guys have answered all of my questions, except for one. And Dustin and you and I kind of had this conversation quite a bit, and you've alluded to it a lot, but I kind of told you I'm going to have you. There's a couple things that you really hit. The 30 years was tough for me to swallow, because I'm a let's pay it off as quickly as possible type of guy. But some of the things that I know you and I talked about that I want you to discuss a little more tonight are like the interest rates. We talked about interest rates being low, and now is the time to really, you get more bang for your buck, I think is your verbiage you used. And then the other point that you brought up that really hit me as well was the spreading the cost out to the constituents over who's actually using it,
Right.
I don't know, you had great selling
well,
points. Can you remember some of that?
Well, I mean, again, I think it kind of goes back to, what are our objectives? And I think when we look at any type of financing, I can say pros and cons of each. And I could say, well, one of the cons of 30 years is extended interest costs, right? We're paying more interest costs over 30 years than would over 25 or 20 or 15, just no different than a mortgage for a home. I think one of the things that if we'd say, well, if I just did a poll, how many would want to pay it off in 5 years? We'd all say, yeah, let's pay it off in 5 years. And the question becomes, is 5 years affordable? The answer is probably going to be no, right? And then I would also say that when you do long-term planning and long-term bond uses that solve needs, should district patrons living in the district now bear all the costs of the project? Or should the cost of the project be spread out over a period of time so that people moving in the district 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 25 years from now, should they share some of those costs as well for a facility that's going to be in use for hopefully more than 50 years? So again, that's one of the things as you think about just financing projects and for term, the useful life is a term that we use quite a bit, but one of the strategies is just should current taxpayers bear all the costs, or should those costs try to be spread out based upon the projects being financed? The other one too is that whether it's, again, 20, 25, 30 years, and you look at the interest rate chart I think that we shared with you a month ago, rates will change at some point in time, we just don't know when. And so if you're ever going to finance a project for a longer period of time, you're better off to do it in a low interest rate environment than you're obviously in a higher interest rate environment. And so as you look, and it's no different than construction costs, right? So you look at evaluated projects, and well, we can do it today, it costs $10 million. If we wait 5 years, it's going to be $15 million, right? So it's the same type of concept when it comes to just evaluating the cost of capital, interest rates, inflationary factors as well. And then I also, going back to maybe Lance's question about prepayment, if 30 years is the right solution, or 25 years, or whatever it may be, whatever the right solution is, you always have the ability to prepay. So as things change over time, you can always prepay your bonds earlier. The one thing that we want to try to avoid, and this is really part of just maybe more of our conservative approach, is if something were to happen and we did a 20-year financing, but from a budget perspective, 10 years down the road, there was a challenge that you need to restructure and stretch it from a 20-year financing to a 30-year financing, interest rates may be much higher in 10 years. So sometimes we're better off maybe financing for a longer period of time up front, then over time you reevaluate and if you can, prepay it early. And there's actually been a number of situations, Holton School District, Fort Scott School District, they did long-term financings, both 25 years. Their projects were done 3 years ago. They're already in a position to prepay their bonds earlier than expected. Most bond issues have prepayment provisions included in them of anywhere between 8 and 10 years. Obviously, we're going to try to do an 8-year provision where you can prepay your bonds early as 8 years after the issue date of the bonds. Hope that was kind of what you would. Okay.
Most of them, yep.
Okay.
I have a question for some of the educators that were part of the vision team, or just the educators that are here in this room. So I don't know who wants to come up. No one's jumping out of here. We haven't heard from you guys yet tonight, so I promise they won't be hard questions.
Sure, what'd you ask for?
Well, the first one I have is, I think during the last election that we tried to move forward with, that you guys didn't feel like you necessarily had as big a voice as what you have had in this one, and I want to make sure that you did feel like you were heard, and that the needs that you brought to the group and the team and the architects, that they were heard, and that if there wasn't something, what do you guys feel like was missing from this time?
I really, in the last one, didn't know what was going on. I mean, it just kind of came out, and here's the scope of the bond, and here's what we're voting on. I didn't know what was going on through the process. This time, all of the educators were brought up to date ongoingly through the whole process. We were included in the process. We had in-services where our wants and needs and what we saw as our biggest classroom needs, you've probably seen the pictures of the high school with us putting our needs all over the walls. We put up posters. We really got a chance to evaluate those, and then being able to be part of the vision team as well. And there weren't a lot of educators on the vision team, which was good because it was a mixture. There was still a voice there from some of us educators, but it was community and business people, and so there were so many perspectives. But yes, I feel like, and then Krista and I shared at a teacher in services some of the updates that were going on with the entire faculty. They had chances to vote on what they saw as priorities as we went through, as we looked at the different strands of possibilities. And then updates were given regularly through emails through the schools too. So I really felt this time we were included and had a lot of chance to know what was going on and give input into that.
And you think that the message got sent on to the other educators and not just within the group that you guys got to participate in, that you guys were able to convey that and move forward like through the in-services, and that a broad base of teachers now have a better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, especially, when we first started and everybody was kind of writing our things up on the walls, they weren't sure where it was going, but after we shared it at the in-service and they got a chance to see what the proposed ideas were and go put their dots on where they saw their priorities, it was very clear that everybody had their opinions and everyone had a chance to share that. So, and I heard a lot more feedback then.
What people maybe wanted didn't always get to be able to happen because of the financial piece, which was largely put on the vision team to make sure that financially what we are proposing to you is responsible as well. So I think that was important to convey to staff as well. We may want the moon, but we have to look at what can be given, what the community will support as well. And so I do think they felt some empowerment and some choices and could do some things. So, and DLR did a nice job. They were here at the beginning, and anybody could go and say, I want this, I want this, I want this, I see this is wrong with things, this needs to be changed. And they took some of that back to these committees. And they were in our building, so it's accessible to staff.
Great. I have some other questions, but if anybody else wants to ask the teachers anything while they're up here, so they don't have to keep hitting up and down. No? That's all I have for you guys.
Thank you.
If Val and Chris, if you come back up.
Dun, dun, dun.
really, actually, I feel like we've covered a broad spectrum of things tonight. I think one thing that we haven't touched on is the timing of this. That would be my next question, is I think if we move forward tonight, the proposed election is in November with the general election. Is that correct? Do you guys feel like that is the right time? Do you guys need more time? Are there things that you could take advantage of if you had more time?
No.
No. No, no.
I really think this is the right time. I think this is the right plan. I agree with what Lance had said, that we need to do something. I feel like the last effort was doing something. I think this effort is doing the right thing. I think we've gone through, and part of it is because of the support we had from DLR. When they put in 1,800 man hours inspecting the buildings. We have experts inspecting the buildings. Not interrogating staff, interviewing staff, just kind of getting a holistic picture and an expert picture of what's going on. So we had a jump start on what prior committees, we've been doing this for 10 years with different committees. The last Facilities Needs Committee met for almost 2 or 3 years before they proposed a plan, and that included the members of the committee going through every building and seeing every leaky faucet and every rusty door. This time, it was a much quicker, a much more real-time assessment. I think we have a better picture of exactly what the district needs right now as opposed to what the district needed 5 years ago when we went through the buildings, and an expert opinion. So we had all of the information, survey data, building assessment, population estimates, and growth estimates. We had all of this going into this, so I think we really have exhausted the investigation part of it. And I think we've really got a good plan and a good timeline on this.
I agree. To add on to that for DLR, could you talk to the public about the advantages of going with the general election versus a special election?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the $64,000 question in the state of Kansas today. You tell me what the political landscape is going to be like in Washington in November, and I'll tell you whether you should be on an election in November. I'll know that probably October 31st. History has shown special elections have a slightly better chance of passing than a general election, but that's mostly because you're able to target the ballot question via a mail ballot. So unless you're willing to do a mail ballot sometime in 2018, which is not allowed now in 17, you pretty much have to go in November. I think this committee has worked hard, and I think this committee is ready to get after it for a November election, so it doesn't scare me to go in November. But I wouldn't be afraid if we were to look at something in early 18 for a mail ballot either. But I would tell you that this committee wants to get after it for a November election. It doesn't cost you any money to put it on the ballot in November compared to a mail ballot or something that'd be a specialized election early 2018. And as Dustin will tell you, what interest rates do between now and 2018 is a wild card, what happens in the political landscape, and to be frank with you, what happens in the economy can change overnight. We've had hurricanes change things dramatically in terms of the cost of materials for some projects. So the sooner we can get an election going, the sooner we can get things out to bid, the sooner we can be confirmed for pricing. And so when you delay things for a special election until early 2018, you just add more risk. And so I think the committee's anxious to try to get going with a regular election on the general ballot in November, and I think we're going to help them as best we can educate the public about the need.
I just want to follow up a little bit on that. So our biggest chance if we wait longer is that it's not going to change, I guess, the scope of anything. If we wait longer, it's just we're taking more risk. Is that?
Well, it would be totally up to you as a board to change the scope, that you decide the scope,
Right.
but based on if you were to run the same election again, or this current proposed scope of work in early 2018, the only risks are not the projects themselves, but the cost of those projects or the interest rates. You could change the scope if you wanted to do it, but I'm just proposing that
Okay.
same scope in early 2018 is going to be a little bit more money, and you just expose yourself to more risk in case something was to happen. And again, we budget our projects, and I can talk to, the CMR folks can tell you, they really budget things for the mean of when projects are going to go out to bid. So the longer it takes to get the projects out to bid, the bigger challenge it is to estimate the pricing of what's going to be accurate, because you can't we're not estimating prices for today. They're estimating the prices for when we're likely to go out to bid. And the longer that can get delayed, the more crystal ballish you have to do, to be honest with you.
Okay. All right. I have another question.
Go for it. I'll go after you.
One of the things that, and I just, more assurance or concern is that we've talked about the early Head Start expansion. That's going to happen, and that's come up several times as a problem for us, that we don't have this, or we have to find the space somehow. How does this problem address that by moving it to Laughlin? We have Washington where we put early childhood connections, and yet we're going to move to Laughlin. Are we going to have enough space? Is that going to be adequate for our growth?
Yes, the short answer.
Explain that.
So, O'Laughlin, as it sits now, is more square footage than the Early Childhood Connections program would take, but it plans for the future of it going from half day to full day.
Right.
And so, in order to use that building more efficiently, that's when we've added a few more other programs to that space, which would be the West Side program as well as the Learning Center. So that building, as it sits now with, I think it's a safe room, classroom addition to it, would be sufficient space to house those programs.
Okay. So we'll be able to follow through with the federal grant that allows us to make this
Yes, that's
bigger,
correct.
because I know that was a concern. But what about, we were talking about learning West Side and Learning Center in the same space as we have children less than 5 years old. I mean, just sneeze will knock a couple kids down. I mean, how are we going to protect the two different populations that we're dealing with here?
And that's something we did talk about extensively with the staff that administers those different programs. And frankly, that building, just from a cost standpoint, was the most efficient way to house those programs. But we wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable with those decisions, so we met with those teachers and spoke about that, and everybody felt comfortable with the decision. As far as the renovation that we can do, we can go as far as completely dividing that building in half or in whatever portions need to be to sufficiently support those programs, and have separate entrances and exits and have separate circulation spaces so that they can almost act as two different buildings but be under the same roof, if that makes sense. So there's lots we can do from a design aspect to completely separate those programs if that's what everybody feels is the most appropriate action. But in talking with those teachers and those staff, they felt like that would be a doable solution, and they were comfortable with that. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that. That was in the committee.
I can. Mr. Adams, that was a big concern of ours, too, when that was a suggestion. And that was our first question, and we spoke actually with some of the teachers as well. The layout of the Laughlin, the different wings of it allow for that separation if needed, and the staff assured us on the committee first before we ever even went forward with that. There's the wings of that can be completely separated out, and it allows for the common areas of a cafeteria and the gymnasium to be utilized and accessed differently, so that there's no crossover with that at all. And so that was just a big concern of ours as well. So it was addressed.
And you feel comfortable with how it's been addressed?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
All you.
I'll stop.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm a professor, man. I'll go forever.
I know. I was giving you ample time right there.
I'll stop. Thank you. I'll stop.
This is our second go-around on this, and wow, the general feeling is pride. I mean, this is a community coming together. Not to underestimate what was done in the past, but the entire process. The question and answer tonight, I think, has been amazingly enlightening. Because I definitely came in with, well, up until maybe 45 minutes ago, there were several reservations that have been answered directly tonight, which I'm very thankful for. As Lance said, I mean, we could take a magnifying glass. We've got about 40 people in this room. We could all probably come up with 50 combinations of what we would like. I don't see that as the purpose of the board. I think the purpose here is to look at the plan, make sure we've got all of our I's dotted, T's crossed, and present this to the community. So out of everything that's been discussed tonight, I am very thankful, very happy, and very pleased with all of the effort that has been performed. My only disappointment would come on the end of the district in itself, in that we talked about this blue line. Above is where we are currently, below is where we would like to be, yet we haven't put any forethought into how we would get there. Now, I realize that is a long ways off, but moving into a $78.5 million bond with building these sections with the intention of lessening our student-to-teacher ratio within the buildings, but to have an unknown as, now I know we can't answer exactly how we would fill all of them right now, but not to have a plan in place or not to have really considered that yet, that is troublesome to me, because I want this to become reality. I spoke with the principal today. I've spoken with numerous teachers, and the classroom dynamics have changed. I mean, whether we want to admit it, we want to ignore it, we want to hide it, it doesn't matter. Speak with them. They will tell you honestly that they have changed. Even for a place like Hays, Kansas, where you would probably think everything is more on the side of sunshine and rainbows than it is daily struggles, it's not the case. It's everywhere. So this is something that, maybe this is where I screw up and I'm a little biased here. This is something that I feel very passionate about, and I would like to feel better about our district's commitment in getting us here. So that is my only hiccup at this point. I think this is a much better plan than the $94 million. I think it engages us out in the future to link up with something more cohesive when we need to revamp and redo again. I think we are getting much larger bang for the buck, and my hat's off. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for the effort. Thank you for the commitment, and thank you for your willingness to stand up here for about an hour and some change, and answer all of our questions. Very pleased, very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess I would move that to Superintendent and Tracy first, in that don't take my stern look and my seriousness as that of anger, but I am a little disappointed, and I would like to know, do we take this serious? I think it's being proposed to us, so we're going to take every facet of this bond proposal serious, and I would rather start working on this sooner, rather than later, because it's going to take some creativity and some pretty good diligence to get through that.
Well, I do assure you, Josh, that upon the decisions that are made tonight, and if the community would support it, if it does come to that in a vote, with the community, there will be a solution to it.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. Well, with that being said,
Motion?
are we asking for more time, or are we making a motion to move forward tonight? I make a motion to accept the $78.5 million bond proposal as presented to the Board of Education.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved by Board Member Waddell and seconded by Board Member Adams. Open that up for discussion. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to share?
I apologize, Mr. Jeter, for asking that question prior to the motion. It is being asked for action tonight, correct? If I interpreted everything in there?
I believe so.
It is.
Okay.
Just discussion.
We kind of covered discussion, but I just want to make sure nobody has anything else that they want to.
I just wanted to clarify just the understanding of the board, even if you read that, if it really becomes two different motions. I mean, this one you vote on, but the other motion is also a matter we need to know if the November date.
Specifying the date.
It would pass. If the first motion passes, then there'd be another motion really in the direction of what is the date for to take it to the public. Dustin can address that.
Well, and to John's point, the second motion would be the resolution that's, I believe, in your packet this evening as well. That would be the second resolution, which is really the formal action taken by the school board to put it on the November ballot.
And I guess just to address
We
with,
had one motion then, I guess.
yeah, you can amend it.
Go ahead, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I guess just to go back through, while we're talking about the date, to go back with DLR, in your opinion then, you made the comment that a lot of times special elections are better for this, and obviously I know there's a lot of what-ifs that are out there as far as the political landscape, but in your professional opinion, as far as what you guys have done and worked with other districts and things like that, you do feel that this November, as far as what we've done, what we have, is the best bet for our community and this district to do this?
Yeah, based on the results of your previous elections, your biggest block of people that didn't show up to vote was parents. Your challenge has always been getting parents informed and getting them to the polls. And so I think a special election would help, but I also think November, because I think there will be a political landscape that will drive people to the polls due to the amount of interest in things, will work as well. I would never propose a primary or an April election, but a general in November is your second best bet compared to a special election. And again, a special election can't occur until 2018 sometime, and I think that the trade-off in terms of doing it early versus maybe the benefits of a special election wash. So I would say November is fine, and I think your committee is fine with November that is making this recommendation, and they want to get after it. So I would go after November, to be honest with you, because I think it's the best approach right now, knowing all the parameters of what's going on with the state and the political landscape. But more importantly, your committee really wants it to be on the ballot in November, and they're going to be gung-ho to go after it then.
Sorry about that, Paul. Go ahead if you had some other.
Just say, there's been a lot of effort, a lot of time. It's a 10-year vision that we've been working on, and I think it's time to move forward. I'm speaking in favor of the motion. I think we're ready. Our community deserves it. Our kids do, and you've done a great job of parsing it down to essentials. But further than just essentials, and that's the part that really impressed me. It's not like last time, and I feel bad that I supported last bond issue. Okay, I feel bad. Because it was just let's fix it, and we're going to put everything in the big garbage can. We're going to fix the whole district. I really like the fact that this is moved to a vision, and the visioning team, you moved to a vision of what our schools can be, what we can do in the educational, the environment, to make our students ready for that post-secondary education. I mean, that's one of the things that our assessment system that the state has put on us does, is do we prepare people to do that? This looks like it can help us get to that vision, and in many ways may move us ahead of a lot of other districts. We're good. Our ACT scores would indicate that we're very good, but we can be better, and I think at some point a year ago, I think Josh said we could be the best, and I think this may help us get there. I think it's still a very good vision, so that's all I have to add.
It is, and I reiterate, the fact of the portion that I questioned back and forth was, the committee is not coming to the board to ask that if we think the $78 million bond is the right amount. That was what we tasked everybody with from the get-go, and I think even the public, in saying that the board wanted to, for lack of a better term, stay at a distance on this, to let the community and everybody else speak on this. So I think at the end, that's basically what we're doing here. We're allowing, to take this to the community and take it to a vote and let them, and I would hope, as we go down this path, for the next several months, granted, we're saying, okay, this is the amount that, that we're going to take to the general public. I think we can continue to work with the public to continue to shape this and get this to where everybody is happy with the direction it's going, and hopefully address as many needs as we can with that. So.
The best laid plan always comes with a glitch or two. Everything's going to have one. It's just the way it is. Some of the things that were holdups or down dressings from community members I saw the forethought that went into these tonight. very easy to explain now, and maybe even to some regard, while I don't like to use this term, easy to defend. So I feel good. Much better than the $94 million presentation. Much better. I will sleep tonight, one way or the other.
Go ahead.
I do want to say something, because a lot of these decisions, well, all of the decisions should be defendable if we've met for as long as we have. Part of the logic with November versus special election, even though we have heard that special elections have a better chance in general, is that part of the holdup with the community has been the feeling that the district will spend the extra money to try to sneak it in under the radar. And November does not cost us anything for a special election. It's out there, people can vote on it, and it is perfectly open. There's no tricks, there's no smoke and mirrors. We're having an election, we're putting it on the ballot. That was a big part of the logic there, that, you know, even if a special election has a better chance, we don't need something with a better chance. This is an excellent plan that will pass on a November ballot.
And I appreciate that. And I'll be honest, for me personally, at the end of the day, I don't care when the election is. I want to make sure that whenever the committee or, you know, moving forward with this, whenever they think is the best, that the most important thing to me is making sure we have that time for education to the community and making sure that they're all up to date on exactly what we're trying to accomplish and just basically having a firm grasp on exactly what's being presented to them and what they're being asked to vote. To me, that's more important than all of that. So.
Yeah, I guess I would say you did a great job building excitement with us tonight. Now the next task would be building that with the community.
That's the easy part.
Yeah, the easy part, that's right.
And now, are you all staying on to be part of, depending how we vote here in just a few moments, will you still be part of the vision, depending on how we vote? We have to do that.
Yes, either way.
Either way.
Either way, we will still be on the vision committee. If it does not pass tonight, we will continue to work. If it does, we will be on the team to educate our general public, and we've taken volunteers too, so that if it does pass in November, if it passes here tonight and it passes in November, we have volunteers for an oversight committee as well that would be willing to work with the Navajo as well as Paul Wertenberger as an oversight committee, just to give extra information and make sure that our vision and what we've proposed to you stays on track as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Keep rotating the carousel here. Yes, the vast majority of the committee is ready to continue campaigning for this. As you know, I'm running for City Commission. I fully intend to continue to promote this. This has been a major priority for me for the last 2 years. I don't plan on dismissing that just for another campaign. So it will be, this is still very much on my radar and the majority of the committee members as well.
Very good. Well, we have a motion and a second on the table. Make sure we have no further discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Now I believe we need to do the date on this. So I would entertain a motion to specify the date of the election as far as to be addressed on there. And I think, do we have the date of in November?
November 7th.
7th? Oh, okay. Right in front of me.
Yeah, there it is.
I'll move that the election date for the consideration of the public by this bond issue be on November 7th, the general election.
I second it.
What else has to go on with that? November 7th, 2017, general election. Sorry about that. Yeah. Do we need to read the whole? No.
Bill, do we need to read that entire thing or just basically make the motion for?
You should specifically adopt that resolution.
Okay.
I don't think you need to read it.
Okay.
but
You want to amend your?
That
you'd adopt the resolution authorizing it to
Okay.
be on the general election.
Well, I motion that we adopt the resolution proposing the general election November 7th, 2017, as presented in the four documents.
Been moved by Board Member Adams. And did you second?
Second.
And seconded by Board Member Fox. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you all, guys.
You have to stay for the rest of the meeting.
We're going to do bill feds. Come on.
Yeah, the exciting part's coming.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is the board president appointments, and I believe we have everything on there. Sarah, if I'm not mistaken, there's one. Refresh my memory.
Jeff Briggs did decide he would spend the next term.
He did. Okay, perfect. So that's been addressed then. Okay, so I think those are all, and I think most of them pretty well stayed the same. We did have Jeannie Michaelis' position was replaced by Abby Maska, I believe, and I believe the rest of everybody is pretty well staying as they were. So I don't know. I don't think we need to make any votes or anything on that. Next item on the agenda is the board member vacancy appointment, and this, I believe, we've already put the deal on the paper, correct?
We have.
For that? Okay. At this time, have we?
We are still wishing for interest in this particular position.
Okay.
So it's more from the standpoint of a timing to use our board meeting to end up saying to the public, please, anybody interested, please contact our office at this particular point. We know that we're not crunched for time. I mean, that's not an issue. We couldn't even have done anything at this board meeting with it anyway. There's no action that could have been done time-wise. But I'm just saying for the public to be aware, we would like very much to fill the seat that's right here that's open, and that position is a 2.5-year position at this point. And if anybody is interested, we would like them to please contact the office, and we will work with those individuals at that point.
Do we need to explain? Or is there any sort of public notice or anything on how that position is brought forward? I mean, as far as like, I know a few years ago when Luke and I were first, and
Paul.
We were all up for it. We just came and we met, got asked questions by the board for a while, and they made a vote for that position.
And I would say that in the few conversations I've had with a few board members, that would be probably the same
Right.
plan. If we had 3 individuals that were interested, we would have a board meeting in which there would be set questions for each one, and they would be asked those questions, and a decision would be made as far as the board which person they wanted to select for that position. So it would be
Mandy,
very
as a
simple.
board, you decide the process.
Yeah, I say it's just a little bit different than how the normal elections go.
Yeah.
Said at this point there've been no
At this point, no.
inquiries even, or anybody?
Well, I wouldn't say that. There has been a few inquiries,
Okay.
but the inquiries, it's not individuals that say, put my name on the list. I view that as quite different, so.
Well, I want to see them.
Very good. Well, I would assume we'll address that then. I think, when is the next board meeting?
Yeah.
Probably addressed. I don't remember. Could be.
Next board meeting soon is August 7th.
Yeah, so I would assume it'll be on the agenda then, and we can go from there, see what we have as far as for. So, next item on the agenda is a negotiations update.
We did end up having another meeting with the negotiations with the teacher group, and this one was the first time to talk about finances. I would say it sets the stage for then our executive session to have some conversation as well. So we will be talking on this, but we need to end up having executive time to talk on that topic. The custodial group as well had their first negotiations meeting, and same thing. We're at a point to talk to the board tonight in executive session about negotiations with them. So we're moving along. I would say, once again, no different than the budget issue. It's been a slow process to be the end of July, and we're dealing with it. But I do assure you that most districts in the state are definitely in the same spot.
Okay. Very good. Any questions on the negotiations stuff? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the goal setting. And I think that was just basically,
Yeah, we had the meeting a week ago. The one piece I wanted to share, maybe for the public more than anybody, is that in that session, we spent a couple hours looking at the goals, the 5 goals that were set last year. And as we worked with them, even in considering what our task is from the state with the new accreditation process, the decision really, as we worked through it, was those goals are solid even for this next year. We would look at maybe some of the objectives and maybe change some of them, alter a little bit with some of the objectives underneath the goals that we've set, and we'll have that outlined in August to formalize as being the goals going into this next year as well.
very good. Any other questions on the goal setting? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the health insurance. And I think this is more, if anything, than just kind of an update as far as how we've been going on that. I believe Mike Howell with Gallagher is here as well. Mike, can you kind of just give a brief update as far as the board, as far as how the meetings and things like that have been going and what we've done on that?
We actually held meetings with and invited all the teachers to come in and hear kind of firsthand of what we've been investigating. We did 2 meetings last Thursday, the 19th. 2 of them, one was in the evening, 2 last Wednesday, last Thursday, and then we did 2 today. We've had an excess of 300 people actually take time to show up and come to the auditorium to listen to those. From 32 years of doing this, the body language was actually pretty good. I think people got educated. There's a lack of understanding of what they have that was very evident in these meetings, because asking very simple questions about benefits, the employees seemed somewhat clueless of what they really had. So when we compared and showed them alternatives that possibly could be out there, there seemed to be enlightening questions after the meetings were very positive. And so in talking with John, I mean, at this point, I think we're working on a survey to kind of find out what the feelings really are from the folks, get more feedback. We presented some plans that would definitely save employees money, even in the products they purchase themselves, and the overall, not a huge upfront savings to get out of the situation you're in with the state of Kansas, but the problem is you're in a situation where you really have zero control. The costs just keep going up. Employees really don't choose anything. They get what they have, and there's no really good end in sight to what's currently going on. For a district your size, it's very unusual to be in that situation. But I think the meetings have gone well. I think there's an upbeatness to it. I think they thought we were going to come in and say, here's something you have to have. John's been very open to tell them that we're not forcing anything on you. We're saying we're wanting to educate you on what you have, which that was a huge deal, and then explain these are things that are out there, and here's how it's different, and here's how you could really probably make different buying decisions as an individual. 98% of your folks are enrolled in the same medical plan, which you don't choose. The state tells you what it is, and it just changes when they change it, and then the rates go up with that. And the best example I can give you, just quoting your group when we had good information on the dental plan itself, to mirror the plan you have, the exact same coverage, same plan, same provider, there's about an $80,000 swing in the premiums to go on your own versus what you're getting through the state. And that's the biggest example I can give you. The others, it just kind of depends where we end up at the very final numbers. So I'll answer any questions anyone has about it.
You know, the one piece I'd like to also share is in talking to each one of the 6 groups, and then for the board to hear this again. This came about because of the end of negotiations last year, of understanding that $600,000 increase and $400,000 increase and another $420,000 increase, 3 years in a row of that kind of increase in health insurance prompted an agreement with the teacher group at the end of negotiations that we should study it. And Mike came in mid-year and has been in the process of gathering information and data, and has just been presenting what he has found back to us at this point. but it was really something that was a year ago, maybe even, well, I would say it really prompted at that particular point because of how big an increase the health insurance was. And then when you study just a little bit on that, the issue too of saying, well, how can our expenses go down? I mean, we were like set, I forget the
You
number,
were
7 million.
7.3 million in 15, and your actual claims exposure between medical, dental, and the RX, they dropped to 5.7.
So how can it do that, and yet our deductible goes up, and our increase was $600,000? How is that possible? And so that also, the flexibility issue came up as far as we need to study this. So at this point, yeah, I think Mike's done a fantastic job of sharing that. A lot of interest when, and it was teachers and staff. I mean, it was all staff that was to this. So we had a little over 300 people that did come to those 6 meetings. And at this point, we're just going to still try to gather information. That's really what we're doing at this point.
Very good. Anybody have any other questions?
I was just going to say, Mike, I actually attended one of those meetings. I thought you did a tremendous job just explaining everything and really explaining a comparison of the options. You know, I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Next item on the agenda is the milk bid for the 2017-18 school year.
Yeah, I don't know if Jessica needs to come forward. The last time she came forward, the question was, well, how many bids do we have? And we have 1 bid. So I don't know if you have any specific questions for her about the 1 bid. It's the same provider as last year, you know, that we had, and we've been very satisfied. So I don't think there's any different information at this point with that.
I would make a motion that we approve the milk bid from Highland Dairy for the 2017-2018 school year.
Been moved by Board Member Waddell. Seconded by Board Member Lang. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Jessica, I hope we'll have vanilla shake milk at the next board meeting. Next item on the agenda is the pre-enrollment class projections.
Speak on that for a moment. The numbers really, I don't know that they're as important because we have enrollment and they could easily change here or there. So I think the thing I want to make sure that we point out is that you understand the process we use, especially at the elementary level, since we are a choice district. Those numbers in red mean those classes are closed, those sections, those schools cannot take anymore. So we really do, on a weekly basis, take a look at this. Our administrators are looking at that when we get a phone call. The yellow is cautionary that we're nearing capacity, and then green, there is availability. So you can take a look at where we're at. We knew that our K-1 continues to be our tightest classes. And then also at the bottom, I just included the middle school and the high school, what their overall totals, and then the grade level breakdown. So our projected enrollment as a district right now is at the bottom, 2,943. I will point out that the elementary and the high school will see an increase based on the class that's graduating and the class we're leaving and the class that's coming in. And that is where we added the certified staff to follow and keep class levels down. Also, I just want to point out that enrollment is a big deal this year with the state finance formula. The last couple of years, honestly, it's been nice to not have to worry about the September 20th count. We've had to submit our data, but we weren't audited in the spring based on those numbers. And if you remember, you know, Tracy will base our budget on the projections, and then we'll have the count day. And then the auditor comes in the spring and tells you exactly if you are going to receive those dollars or more or less. So we're going back to that process. But count day and enrollment and all those fine details are important, especially when we talk about at-risk and bilingual funding and transportation and some of those weightings. So we will be keeping a close eye on this as we move forward. Again, at the elementary level, we do have some students on a waiting list, but that will depend on if we have openings or not. So, do you have any questions for me? Where we are in the process? Again, John mentioned the district, we are starting a more centralized enrollment, but that online enrollment is available, so that has increased in number every year. So that's been something that parents have really enjoyed. What's nice is online enrollment, if you get to the part of paying fees and you don't need a credit card at our centralized enrollment, there's going to be kind of a fast track line just to come make a payment. You've done everything online. So that's what we encourage most returning families to do. But we know with new students, there's a few more steps and some questions that need to be asked. So we anticipate that those are most of the families we'll see during our enrollment next week would be the new families. But we really encourage returning families to go online, do the online enrollment, and then pay fees or pay online.
If I could add one thing, since Shanna brought that up, just so you're aware. With Senate Bill 19, the state-based aid per pupil is based on the previous year or the year prior to that, whichever is higher, the enrollment of those 2 years, but our weightings are still current. So we will have some uncertainty on bilingual transportation, things like that. Those will still be audited September 20th and potentially change then when we hear our audit results in February or March. But the majority, the base state aid, is based on the last 2 years, higher amount. So that will definitely give us some stability.
Thank you.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is the special meeting notices for the 2017-18 budget and budget hearings. And I believe we have those set basically for the special meeting notice for August 10th, 2017 at 7 in the morning. The Tepfer boardroom for the USD 49 public notice of public hearing for the 2017-18 budget, and a special meeting notice for August 24th, 2017 at 5:30 p.m. in the Tepfer boardroom for the approval of the 2017-18 USD 49 budget. I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Been moved by Board Member Waddell,
Second.
seconded by Board Member O'Borney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is the copy paper bid.
I will take that, just to let you inform you what we've done. We did receive back 5 valid bids for our copy paper. Contract Paper Group was the low bidder with a total amount of $21,627.60. You can see there on the chart of how the other offers came in and were submitted. So we are just requesting that at the next meeting you would approve the low bid of Contract Paper Group.
Very good. Any other questions on that? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the title and budget approval and SPED update. And I think Raj is going to go over some of that for us.
I guess as a board, what you have to do, there is 2 prongs when it comes to Title 6B. One is eligibility, other part is assurances. And if you go through the list, we have to assure that we follow the federal guidelines, and at the same time we kind of meet all the eligibility criteria, and we do the child find and whatever required by the Title 6. So that's one that we need assurance from the board. Okay. Second prong, what I'm going to say, actually we discussed about the federal cuts, what's going to happen in 2018-19. One, the major one this point in time is coming is Medicaid. That was part of the Tracy list as well. What is proposed both in Senate and House is $880 billion. is like 25% of total Medicaid dollars that comes to a state. Last year, I had Senator Moran coming into our district, and he was talking about, special education is not funded per capacity. Yeah, we are not. We are supposed to get funding 40% from the feds, but we get only 15%. So the Medicaid was a source for us to get rest of the money. Okay. So with this bill that's proposed in both in House and Senate, we can lose at least 25% of the funding to 25 to 50 in next 10 years. Okay. So there's again an advocacy piece here. Whoever you can approach, and I have wrote both of them, I think Senator Moran knows our needs, and he is aware about Medicaid and how it's important for our state of Kansas and most of the rural states, So if you look at, we moved to Medicaid through a new billing system with Greenbush, and you can see what we get. We get 190,000 in Medicaid by billing. Okay. So last year, you remember, we hired a behavior specialist, social worker. They bill for this, and we can pay for speech therapist services. We can pay for social worker. We can pay for behavior specialist. All this money comes, at least a portion of it comes from Medicaid. Okay, and just by going with the online Greenbush Medicaid Mediclaim services, we raised it 40,000. So last year we billed 150. This year we went to 190. They're like 33,000 still kind of pending. So if we add even portion of it, we crossed 200,000. Okay. So these are just added fund that helps special education. Okay. If you look at the special education co-op budget worksheet that we have, this year overall actual unencumbered cash balance that we have is around 1.9 million. Okay. That's more than what we had last year. It's around 500,000 more. We are being efficient up there. But at the same time, if you look at the projection in cuts, I think at least we are trying to save. Maybe whatever cuts we get from the Fed, that will compromise the saving that we have. Plus, if we are thinking about helping parents, that's one thing that day one is my priority. When we look at the salaries, when we look at the wage, you have people working, 5 3/4. So that's my priority, and I think that will help that in that direction. Okay. If you look at overall, I feel like our budget is very balanced. When you have that revenue and saving, and we heard all kind of phone calls back in the spring that we are hiring. We know what we're doing. We have a good balance, and of course, we feel like we prioritize kids. We work with kids, and they are our priority. And we look at numbers. If we look at numbers in Reg Eds, if we're talking about a small class size, and that's why we're doing a Reg Ed as special ed as well. Moving on from there, there's one more item that I want to share with you. That's about what we have done this year. So far with our hiring, we are to the capacity with the teachers. So we have hired, we are fully staffed except for a speech therapist. We still have 2 openings for speech therapist. Okay, so we got 1 resignation in July, and you can do a whole lot if you have resignation in July, and or you have, so if you have late resignation, you can do a whole lot. But this point in time, we are fully staffed when it comes down to teachers. We're still looking for 2 speech therapists. So that's again some updates from the hiring side. We are kind of ready for a new year, and again, we are communicating with all superintendents, and I really appreciate whatever happened today. I'll tell you, there's so many phone calls we received. Of course, the special ed, and access. I think this is a new day in the history of USD 489, and I do appreciate your effort and your hard work. Okay. Thank you for your time, and if you have any question regarding budgets or anything, you can let me know, and I'll be here to help you out. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Raj. And then, Raj, are you asking, do we need to vote on this tonight then?
Yeah, we don't have a board, just have to read all these, that's all.
Okay, so I just need to basically read it? Okay. So the Section 1 eligibility, the LEA assures that it meets all eligibility criteria as established in Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, as amended by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act Amendments of 2004, PL 108-446, and the Education Department General Administrative Regulations. The LEA assures that it has budgeted for the fiscal year 2017 for the education of children with disabilities at least the same total or per capita amount from either of the following sources: state and local funds combined or local funds only. As the LEA spent for that purpose from the same source for the most recent prior year for which information is available, 34 CFR 300.203. The LEA assures it has obtained a DUNS number and has registered with the CCR. On the assurances portion, the LEA assures that it meets each of the conditions in 34 CFR 300.201 through 300.213 and has policies, procedures, and programs in place that are consistent with the state policies and procedures established under IDA or EDGAR and Uniform Grant Guidance. This includes 34 CFR 300.101 through 163 and 300.165 through 174, including but not limited to the following requirements. Is that all you need on there? Okay. Okay, any other questions on the budget approval or the SPED update? Okay. Very good. Next item on the agenda is the KASB 2017 Board Policy Review, as well as quarterly buildings and grounds report for building or board members and agenda requests. Anybody have any questions on any of those?
How bad are the grub worms? I just had to ask. I saw that in there and I thought, grub worm, what?
The bagworms?
Yeah? Yeah, the treatment.
We sort of went to a lowercase h for a little bit over there on one of the evergreens at Hayes High. Marty, I think he was surprised as much as we were how fast it went from viable green to brown just pretty quick. We've got it treated. We've checked with, Jamie had talked to some people from K-State, and they said not to get in too big a rush, give it a little bit of time. They've seen them that bad come out of it at given time. So I don't know exactly how much time we're going to give it, but we're probably going to give it through the spring of next year to see what we have with it. So. And we have treated around the tennis court. We found them there, and we've also got them in some other areas that I'm getting costs on for treatment there. It's pretty expensive to actually treat them, so.
Okay, so the treatment's pretty effective.
Say again?
It's pretty effective at the treatment. So. Yeah,
Yes.
I'd hate to lose our wind blocks.
So, yeah, the tennis courts have definitely been treated already because we knew we had them in there, so. Every place else that we've found them, we've pretty well treated. There's one large area we're trying to get a cost to see just how much it's going to be before we actually go, because probably talking $6,000 to do it in one of the windrows. So I'm taking a look and going to visit with them on the viability of that. So.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Very good. Any other discussion or agenda requests? Okay. I believe we do need an executive session tonight. So I will move that the Board of Education recess into executive session along with the board attorney and the superintendent pursuant to Open Meetings Act, except for personal matters of non-elected personnel, KSA 75-4319B1, And matters relating of employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the representative or representatives of the public body or agency, KSA 75-4319.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would recommend you do those as separate executive sessions. And as you recall, we also need to indicate the subject matter within the motion.
All right.
And don't ask me for any guidance on how specific.
They have made this so convoluted.
Lance, I did an example on the motion page that should be sufficient for the first motion that you'll need to make.
This is the one we're doing tonight?
Correct.
All right, well, I'll just read it. I move the Board of Education recess into executive session along with the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and board attorney to discuss negotiations pursuant to Open Meetings Act, except for matters relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with representatives or representatives of the public body or agency, KSA 75-4319, B3, with the open session to resume in this room at, how much time do you think we need?
Okay, now, is this specific for just the negotiations right now?
Sure.
10 minutes?
Do we have to come back down and then go into exec session again for the second one?
Yes.
No. Let's not start that in 5 minutes.
Did some people in an office that never go through this make this decision?
Apparently.
Wow.
Doesn't apply to them.
All right, then I guess to resume at, go ahead.
No, that was for negotiations. The other one, I do need Rusty and Tracy to be
Okay.
part of that meeting.
So
Actually,
we'll just, how about 9 o'clock?
Should we do that one first?
Do you want us to do that one first so they can go?
well, Rusty could go. We need Tracy for probably both of them.
Okay.
Well, actually, for negotiations, Rusty's part of the,
All right, scratch that. We'll just do the one we have here then.
yeah, go with that one, but in
9:05. That give everybody time. Okay.
So, start session.
Wow. I would, second. Okay, second. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.